The day I was fired was the worst day of my professional life. And also, though I could not have known it at the time, one of the best things that ever happened to me. That is the thing about the moments that break us open. In the middle of them, all we can feel is the breaking, the future, the part where we understand why it had to happen, the part where we see what was being cleared away to make room for something better. That part is invisible when you are sitting in a parking lot, holding a box of your belongings, trying to understand how everything just fell apart. But the future always comes, and the universe always has a reason. This is a story about a toxic boss, about the specific, corrosive damage that a person in power can do when they choose to use that power to diminish rather than develop, about what it costs the people they target, and about what it ultimately costs them. His name, for the purposes of this story, was Mr. Hargrove, and he was the kind of manager that most people who have worked in corporate environments will recognize immediately, not because he was overtly abusive, but because he was something more insidious. He was a gaslighter, a credit taker, a person who surrounded himself with talented people and then systematically ensured that none of them felt secure enough to outshine him. The woman at the center of this story is named Claire. She had joined the company 3 years before the events of this story, full of energy and ideas, and the kind of genuine enthusiasm that makes people good at their jobs. She had been hired specifically for her expertise in a field that the company was trying to expand into. She was, by any objective measure, exactly what they needed. And Hargrove had recognized that immediately, which was precisely why he had set about undermining her from almost the first week. It started with small things. Her ideas in meetings would be heard in silence, and then, 20 minutes later, repeated by Hargrove as his own. Her reports would be returned with extensive notes that were less about improving the work and more about demonstrating that he had read it, that he was in control of it, that it was his to approve or reject. Her requests for resources or support would be delayed, questioned, or quietly denied without explanation. When she raised concerns, he would look at her with a kind of patient, patronizing sympathy and tell her she was being oversensitive, that this was just how business worked, that she needed to develop a thicker skin if she wanted to succeed at this level. She began to doubt herself. That is what gaslighting does. It does not just make you question the specific incident. It makes you question your entire perception of reality. She started to wonder if she was, in fact, oversensitive, if her ideas were not as good as she thought, if the problem was her. She worked harder. She arrived earlier and stayed later. She overprepared for every meeting. She tried to be more agreeable, more accommodating, more careful not to trigger whatever it was in Hargrove that seemed to respond to her with hostility. None of it worked. Because the problem was never her performance. The problem was that she was good. And Hargrove could not tolerate people who were good. The firing came after a client presentation that Claire had led. It had gone exceptionally well. The client had been enthusiastic, had asked follow-up questions, had specifically praised Claire's analysis. Hargrove had been in the room. He had smiled and nodded and said all the right things. And then, the following week, he had called Claire into his office and told her that her performance had been consistently below expectations, that the client had expressed concerns, and that the company was letting her go. It was so far from reality that Claire's first reaction was confusion. She genuinely thought she had misheard. She asked him to clarify. He repeated it. She asked for specifics. He gave her vague generalities that could not be challenged because they were not specific enough to dispute. She was walked out of the building that afternoon. The shock lasted for weeks. The grief lasted longer. Not just the grief of losing the job, though that was real, with all its practical consequences, but the grief of the 3 years she had spent there. The energy she had poured into a place that had been slowly poisoning her. the self-doubt that Hargrove had planted so carefully that she could not yet see it clearly enough to uproot it. She spent time in therapy. She spent time with people who had known her before Hargrove, who could reflect back to her the person she had been before his voice had become the loudest voice in her head. She spent time rebuilding the confidence that had been methodically dismantled, and she spent time paying attention to what was happening at the company she had left. Because here is the thing about toxic bosses: they do not stop being toxic when their target is gone. They simply find a new target, or two, or three. And each new target adds to the body of evidence that eventually becomes impossible to ignore. Within 6 months of Claire's departure, 2 more people had been fired under similarly opaque circumstances. A fourth had resigned, citing a hostile work environment. The pattern was becoming visible, not just to the people inside the company, but to the clients who were beginning to notice the turnover, the inconsistency, the erosion of the expertise they had been paying for. The client from Claire's final presentation, the one Hargrove had claimed had expressed concerns, reached out to Claire directly. They had heard she had left the company. They wanted to know if she was available for consulting work. They had, they said, been very impressed with her presentation. They had expressed no concerns whatsoever. That phone call was the first crack in the wall of self-doubt Hargrove had built around Claire. The rest came in pieces over the following year. A former colleague who confirmed that Hargrove had fabricated the client complaints. An HR investigation triggered by the 4th resignation that uncovered a pattern of behavior going back years. A company that had been losing talent steadily, quietly, invisibly, until the losses became too significant to ignore. Hargrove was eventually let go. Not with the same abruptness with which he had dismissed Claire. There were severance agreements and careful language, and the kind of managed exit that powerful people receive. But he was gone. And the reputation he had spent years building, the reputation of a tough but effective leader, had been replaced in the industry with a different reputation, one that followed him. Claire, meanwhile, had built something new. The consulting work with the client who had reached out had grown. She had taken on other clients. She had built a small but excellent team. She was doing the work she had always been good at, without anyone systematically ensuring she never got credit for it. She was not wealthy. She was not famous. But she was free. And she was good at her job in a way that was visible now, in a way that could not be taken from her, because what she had built was hers. There are things that toxic bosses take from you that are hard to quantify. The years of energy poured into a place that was designed to drain you. The confidence that was chipped away so gradually you did not notice until it was almost gone. The opportunities you did not pursue because you had been made to feel you were not good enough. The version of yourself that might have existed if you had been in an environment that developed rather than diminished you. Those losses are real, and they deserve to be grieved. But there are also things that toxic bosses inadvertently give you. The clarity that comes from being forced out of a situation that was never going to serve you. The resilience that comes from surviving something that felt unsurvivable. The self-knowledge that comes from having to rebuild, from having to figure out who you are and what you are worth outside of someone else's diminishing assessment of you. And the freedom. The extraordinary, unexpected freedom of no longer being subject to someone else's need to keep you small. If you are in a toxic work environment right now, if you have a boss who takes credit for your work, who undermines your confidence, who makes you feel like the problem is always you, hear this: the problem is not you. It has never been you. A person who needs to diminish others to feel powerful is not a strong leader. They are a frightened one. And their need to keep you small is the clearest possible evidence that you are exactly as capable as you believe yourself to be. You will not be there forever. Either you will leave, or the universe will move you. And when you get out, however it happens, you will look back and understand that the worst professional experience of your life was also the one that taught you the most about your own strength. The universe does not waste pain. Every difficult chapter is building something in you that the easy chapters never could. And the toxic boss who thought they were ending your story? They were actually just clearing the path for the next one. The best chapter is still ahead. How to generate and publish Instagram posts for Ganakonkati Manus.